Hey everybody, and welcome to another Deck Tech for Opus 14. We are going to continue on our mono train, and this time, get your shovels, go digging, because we're getting into the earth. This is our mono earth deck featuring Titan, Lord of Crags. Unfortunately, I only actually pulled one of these from boxes, so you'll have to forgive the two proxies, but three for this card, of course. You know, I've actually kind of warmed up on this card a little bit. Well, when I first saw it, I don't know. I think the issue is that he doesn't naturally hit forwards of 9k or less. And I would just see, I guess I saw him get stopped a lot. People would just Amaterasu, or they do some sort of effect and just really mess with him. But the more I've played with him, and especially in this mono earth deck, I kind of like him quite a bit. It's nice to have a forward that, you know, it does a board wipe, similar to Shantoto, same cost, but it leaves you with a body afterwards. And with the way this deck is set up, it's very possible to keep your own forwards alive through that and just take out your opponent's forwards. So really neat. If you ever played 14, Titan was like, back in the day, he was the primal to beat because he was just so hard in that landslide mechanic. Would just send you top lane to your doom, and then you didn't even get to watch the rest of the fight. So how are we going to go about this mono earth? Well, if you're playing Titan, you want to play the backup Kobold. Unfortunately, Earth got shafted. It's the only element that didn't get a second primal, which is really disappointing. They could have used King Thoradin. I don't know why Earth got shafted, but whatever. So unfortunately, Titan is the only one right now that builds up off of Kobold. However, when Titan enters the field, Kobold will reactivate, and as long as Titan's on the field, you can dull the Kobold to pump a forward by 1,000. The most obvious synergy with that is when Titan enters, assuming you have the Kobold out, you can always reactivate him on the stack, pump him to put him up to 10k, which means he's basically always going to break 9ks or less, which is really nice. However, to also assist with that, it's mono earth, so of course you've got to play Enecro, 3 copies in this case. Enecro is great because it means as long as she's out, which you want her out in this deck, Titan's going to naturally be a 10,000 power forward, so he'll always break 9ks or less. And then you can use the Kobold to make sure you take out if they have a Braskas or a Neo X-Death or, you know, Yasmat, Omega, whatever the forward issue, whatever the forward is that's giving you trouble. We got to go with 2 copies of my favorite backup. It sticks with the 14 theme because Momodi's from 14, but I love this card. So basically, for free, once per turn, you get to give any of your forwards Brave, which is awesome. It does have a caveat. It has to be done in the main phase for some reason, so just make sure you declare that before you go to combat. But this deck is all about being big, stompy boys. So Momodi is one of my favorite cards to make that work. Some of just the pieces. 3 copies of Cecil, one of my favorite Earth cards. Great removal, especially once they're dull. His Dark Special can be especially nice in here. Just deal yourself a point of damage, take out their forward. 1 copy of Arden. This is kind of techie stuff. Arden is great if they're playing Famfrit. He's a decent counter to Neo X-Death in that he's at least going to return, so you'll get kind of repeated value off of him. If they're playing Veritas, things of that nature. And just, again, especially if you're presenting a bunch of big bodies, it's really valuable to be able to say, hey, that forward can't attack or block. And I've used it as a surprise card a lot that they think they have enough blockers, and then, oh, here comes Arden. Suddenly they've got one less than they're expecting. So kind of fitting in with that theme, another card, Black Tortoise Lassie Gilgamesh. He's just a one-of, but especially right now, when Water's running around, there's a lot of bounce. You can't return him to your hand. They can't bounce him. They can't dull him. And then, you know, again, should they play a Famfrit or a Veritas or whatever, you can select him, and then you won't have to go, great counter to a turn 1 Neo X-Death, say, okay, here's the Tortoise. And you can just select him every turn, and you'll never have to lose a card, which is great. So really good as a fun option. 2 copies of the new Mount Leonis. Pretty fun card. I don't think there's anything exceedingly broken he can do in here, but he can bring back any forward in this deck other than Titan, which is unfortunate, but that would honestly be pretty dumb if he could bring back Titan. And then when he dies, he will prevent the next point of damage you would receive. So a lot of times I'll actually use Momodi to give Mount Leonis Brave to make sure that he can always defend as a blocker, and that way I can reduce the amount of damage I'm taking. 2 copies of arguably one of my favorite Earth cards, Shadow Lord. Being able to turn off their EX burst is huge, especially in a day when they run so rampant. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know how it's pretty easy to get around his entry effect to make sure they don't get a free backup off of it. And then, again, Momodi can give something else Brave, and then Shadow Lord has his own Brave effect, so you've got a bunch of guys that just say, yeah, try and get through us. Card I've really loved in this is 2 copies of Scarmaglione. Back attack in general is, of course, a nice little trick, but what I love about him in particular is with Enna Crow. It, you know, in the past, he used to be able to, on his own, trade up to 6,000, right? He tags a forward, takes double damage, he blocks with first strike. But with Enna Crow, that goes up to 8,000. Now, he's a 4K, he'll tag something for double, then he's going to hit 4 times 2, 8, yeah. So I really like him out with Enna Crow. Fun card that at the moment is a one of. If you like this card, feel free to put more of it in. But Calbrina, again, great card to use with Momodi. You want to keep it brave because you want to block with it. With Enna Crow, it's going to be 10,000. And then the way this backup line is designed, especially if you get out a bunch of backups, if you're going to trade with a forward, you know, you block with the Calbrina, they trade, you can sack off a backup, bring the Calbrina back. It's now still a forward, assuming you at least have 3 out that can block again. And what really makes it fun is if they're presenting an unfavorable situation for themselves. So let's say Calbrina's out there as a 10K body. They swing in with an 8,000 power forward. You're like, okay, well, something's up, you know, because obviously otherwise I would just win. But Calbrina is a forward monster. You're more than happy to just, yeah, go ahead, I'll block. Because whatever trick you do, I can put a single backup in the break zone, bring the Calbrina back. Now I've burned out whatever your trick is, and I didn't really lose anything, so... yeah, I like this card a lot. 2 copies of Ingus. Again, it's just a great way to have big Earth Stompy boys. And then, of course, his extra effect where you can dole 3 active Earth Forwards or backups to bump something by 2,000. Can be used to bump Titan into pitch. Again, just another way to do combat tricks. Really fun. 1 copy of Noctis. He's really fun with the summons. And not the Noctis Cecil combo has been around forever, so if you wanted to lean more heavily into this, you could put a 2nd copy in, but so far he's actually felt alright as 1. If you don't know what that combo is, if you're on damage 5 and you have Cecil on the field already, or you can play both, whatever, you put the Noctis out, you use Cecil's Dark Special to put yourself to 6. So Cecil will trigger, kill a 6 cost or less, Noctis will trigger twice, his damage 6 ability will trigger, so you get to break another forward, and then his Hecaton ability will trigger, and he can fight something else, so you can go boom, boom, boom. Really, really brutal. I've liked Graf the more I've actually used him. At first I was like, I don't know, it's just a power boost. Like, is that really worth it? But again, with Momodi having these forwards, it really is. Yes, these guys don't need it as much because they're all big 9Ks, but it means Noctis goes up to 9 or 10 with Enna. Graf himself, 9 or 10 with Enna. Ingus, 9 or 10. Montleonis, 9 or 10. And forwards are getting bigger these days. People have things like Omega. They have things like Philia. They have ways to just boost their forward. I mean, look at Sophie. So threatening a body that could actually give Sophie a run for her money is pretty nice, especially against something like Monks. Speaking of Monks, that was another reason I made this deck. I just didn't want to do Monks again. Everyone knows Monks are good. 2 copies of another one of my favorite Earth cards, Sieghard. Love this card so much. Sieghard combined with Graf makes combat very, very awkward for your opponent. Sieghard means any of your Earth forwards are going to take 1,000 less damage from any source. Sieghard himself will take 2,000 less from any source. Got to use this earlier today against a Moogle deck, and it had the Barrel Eye, and the Barrel Eye with the No-No reactivation. And they had to activate so many times to chunk my board down, and they didn't end up taking out the Sieghard either, but it made it very awkward for them, because normally they'd be, I'll just do 2 attackers, 2 No-No reactivations, 6K to the board, wipe out so-and-so. But because of Sieghard's like, well, I'm going to just reduce a bunch of that, so this card is really fun. 1 copy of Kadaj, arguably, I don't know if he's the best Dark Forward in the game now because of Stern Leonis, but he's incredibly versatile. Great EX burst, and if you get them down early to start dumping their break zone, another way to give these guys Brave, keep them up and active. So, speaking of Brave, I wanted to show off some of the summons here. 2 copies of Exodus. I've warmed up on this card a little bit. The 3K Brave makes a great combat trick, and it's really cheap. And in particular, it makes it so your forwards can't be returned to your hand, which is very popular right now. They also can't be dulled, which is really nice. And when your opponent gets a damage 5, he'll give it to the whole field. And kind of going in with that power buff theme, 3 copies of the best summon in Earth, of course, because it was my spoiler, which is Carbuncle. And yeah, this card is good, and I'm not just saying that because I'm biased because it was my spoiler. It's been really nice. It's really cheap. It's a blanket 2K to the board. It draws you a card. Assuming you must have at least a single backup. If you don't have any backups, it's not going to draw you a card. But as long as you have a single backup out, he's going to draw you a card. And the fact that it doesn't target is huge, because I've seen a lot of people have a Charlotte. Well, if it had to target, it would have to target that Charlotte. But no, it hits your whole board, which is really nice. Carbuncle has been great. I'll use it as a combat trick all the time. 3 copies of Kusith. Just a great summon. EX Burst, Recursion Tool, lets you replay your Titans, which is probably one of your biggest targets. Oh, they're going to get that? Cool, let me just play Titan again. And then 1 copy of Kujata, a card I was not originally super high on when I saw it, but I've warmed up to it just because, again, forwards have... I guess what I like about it is that it's removal that doesn't require a body, which a lot of Earth summons in the past have required, such as the Opus 6 Titan, or, Hecaton Kyre, or Yojimbo. So it's nice, again, if they drop a turn 1 Neo X-Death, if they drop Nail, just one of those high cost of forwards, you can go, alright, well, just Kujata, let me just kill that thing right away. So, in testing, I've liked it a lot. Some of the ways to help you kind of dig through your deck: 2 copies of Suzuhiza, great card. Very rarely does it last a turn. Once it actually did and dealt a point of damage, and look out, within a crow, he's going to be a 2K, but it's just a really easy card to throw out. What I really like about him, too, is as I'm setting up backups early, sometimes I will get a 2-cost backup turn 1, and then turn 2 I have another 2-cost backup, but I have Suzuhiza, so I can pitch, and instead of just leaving that CP up to go to waste, tap it, put the Suzuhiza out, start drawing more. I wasn't sure if I'd ever come back to this card, but I like Miner in this deck a lot. It's always a great card to see early with another backup, because it just feels good to pitch the backup, get it right back in your hand, and in particular later, being able to recur a forward from your break zone. Again, being able to grab Titan multiple times, or if they deal with the Kadaj because they'll want to, or the C card, being able to pull it back with Miner and just jam it into the field feels great. Same with Minfilia, great opening card to get. It just feels fine to throw away 2 characters and get them right back in your hand. Her action ability is just kind of there. Paladin, another way again to help you just dig through your deck. What's really nice is that Paladin grabs an Earth card, so most of the time with Paladin, I'll actually grab a summon. And since Kadaj is the only non-Earth card in this deck, it's impossible for this card to whiff. Even if you hit the Kadaj, you can just grab whatever the other one is. 1 copy of Kolka. Usually I use this to search out the Titan. 1 copy of Bagaman. His effect I use on occasion. I mainly just like it because it's a 2CP backup with a different name than everything else, but there have been a few times, I can't remember what forward it was, but I remember there was a forward I wanted to get off the field, and I had Calbrina, which was bigger than it anyway. I was like, okay, Bagaman, force you to block, and then, take it out. 1 copy of Lael, still just a really good Earth backup, lets you cancel a summon. 1 copy of Graham. Man, this is a neat card, but I have to say, I think they were kind of silly on the restriction on it. So you can only pay with CP produced by Earth backups to play Graham from your hand onto the field, which means he has to be your 4th or 5th backup. However, it does nuke something for 9,000 damage when it enters, and it doesn't have to be dull, which normally a lot of times Earth stuff does that. So I have used this to great effect. Take out that El Cid, take out that Leviathan, Lord of the Whirl. It's got a lot of really nice targets. So there are times it's a little awkward to use, especially if you draw it early. But again, feel free to pitch it. You can get it back with Miner later if you really need it. But he feels really good when you slam him down. And last but not least, one of, I think, the neatest cards we got in Opus 12, White Mage. You can dull it, put it into the break zone, choose an Earth forward, it costs 4 or less in your break zone, play it onto the field, and most importantly, that can be done on your opponent's turn. You can cheat in Sighard to completely mess with combat math, which is great. Graph, not so much on their turn. I've used it to cheat in Noctis before. I'm going to go to 6 damage, and so legit, I'll crack the White Mage, bring Noctis to the field, boom, I hit damage 6. Now Noctis breaks, and he can fight something. That's really fun. And then, of course, you could do it on Shadow Lord if you wanted to, or Scarmaglione is a really funny back attack one to do. But just really fun card. A thing with the summons, too, in Noctis, which is nice, I have to mention it because it happened once, is that I wasn't planning to fight with the Noctis because they had the bigger forward, but I hit the Exodus into damage. So, okay, well, now I'll pump Noctis by 3. Now he's 10. Now I will have him fight. So here's a fun version of Mono Earth. In testing, okay, let's get the obvious out of the way. This deck is kind of slow. Sometimes it feels like it lacks removal. It's all about just getting big guys that are stompy and angry, and they run through your opponent with just massive power, and about just using Titan and replaying Titan as much as you can. I'm not saying this is super competitive or anything, but I do find it enjoyable to play. And again, I just wanted something that wasn't monks. I was so tired of seeing monks, and there are some really genuinely neat Earth cards. I find Calbrina to be very interesting. Carbuncle is a great summon. Seaguard is so much fun the way it messes with combat math. So if you want to try something a little different for Mono Earth, and, you know, give Titan a good old shot, give this a go and let me know what you think. And we will be back with more mono element decks in the future. Of course, deck list will be in the description below. Until then, take care.